Thank you, Mike, and good evening. I'd first like to add my congratulations to the National Black Golf Hall of Fame on its 25th anniversary, and I doubt that the founders thought it would possibly be here 25 years. And even if it was, perhaps not in a room such as this with a couple hundred people, so congratulations. I want to honor the late Harold Donovan, and I also want to recognize and thank Jeff and Marie for continuing the vision. And I think that's what it is, it's life's work. So congratulations to you once again on this wonderful year. I'd also like, and you'll obviously hear from the inductees in a moment, but I'd like to add my congratulations as well to my good friend and colleague Joe Vera, to an advisor of mine and mentor, Rose Harper, and to someone I just had the pleasure of meeting just the other day, Dr. Harold Sinnett. So thanks, or Calvin Sinnett, pardon me, Calvin. But congratulations to all of you on your induction into the National Black Golf Hall of Fame. You might be wondering, so why am I here tonight to stand before you to talk at this august gathering? And I'm going to actually answer that question by responding to another question. And that is, I'm going to tell you why diversity is so important to me. And in order to do that, I have to recount for you 3 periods of my life where really an indelible print was made on me as a person that has brought me to this point. The first occurred when I was a young child-age student, about 5th or 6th grade, growing up outside of New York City. Very interested in sports, loved to play whatever sport was popular in the season. And my best friend happened to be a young African-American gentleman by the name of Kent Jaycox, who was a much better athlete than me, but he let me tag along with him. And so for me, we were just kindred spirits. We were friends that just loved to play sports. I never saw him as a different race than me. And when he would be at my house and I'd be at his, we never saw each other in that context. So that's really where it all started for me. Fast forward, if you would, about 20 or so years later, and I'm married to my wife, Cindy, here, and we were living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time. I was the executive director of the Georgia State Golf Association. I thought I was pretty good at what I did. And Cindy also was in business at the time, had a pretty responsible position. And I watched her do her job, and I said quietly to myself, she should be doing my job. She would do it better than I would. And so at that point, I had internalized something that was also extremely important, and that is gender diversity as well. Because let's face it, in the golf industry, it's mostly male, it's mostly Caucasian male. It's easy to get into a mode that that's the way it should be. I completely disagree with that sentiment, as I'm going to make a few comments later. So that was the second thing that happened. The third thing that happened, fast forward about another 8 to 10 years, and our kids were starting to grow up. Our 2 youngest in particular, I wanted to make reference to. Our youngest son, who was quite a basketball player himself. He was the best, or considered to be the best player to come out of Kansas, out of the high school ranks. He ended up playing 4 years for the University of Kansas, pretty good college basketball program. And all during those years, particularly when he was playing competitive basketball, as you can imagine, the composition of his teams was very diverse. In fact, in some cases, he was one of maybe only 1 or 2 or 3 Caucasians on those teams. So as you could also imagine, we had our house full of kids constantly on these different teams that he was part of. And so it was not unusual sometimes for Cindy, Stephen, and myself to be the only Caucasians in our own house. And it wasn't unusual for me to hug 6'8" and 6'9", very athletic, young African-American individuals. And it was just natural to us. The second piece I wanted to also mention to you is our daughter, who is not an athlete, but is the student of the 3 of our children. And the reason that that's important is because I watched her in terms of the effort that she put into her education, in terms of the smarts that she's been able to apply to her education. And I said to myself, why should she, based on her gender, be in any way disenfranchised as she moves into her career? And so for me, diversity stands for more than just ethnic. It also has to do with gender as well. And so those things really just have been burned in my soul over the last 30 or 40 or now 50 years. And so that's why I have the kind of approach toward things that I do, and the feeling for the subject that I do. So I thought it was important just to give you that. I don't normally like to talk about myself, and you're going to hear from inductees, so this isn't supposed to be a biography, but I just wanted to give you some context of where I'm coming from. So with that said, I want to now move to what's going on in the golf industry, because I'm often asked questions about, so what's the golf industry doing to encourage and celebrate its diversity? And before I start, I'm just going to list a few things. I want you to understand a couple things. First, this is not a comprehensive list. It's not intended to be. And secondly, I'm not suggesting that what we've done is exhaustive. I'm not suggesting that we're there by any means. But we are where we are, and I met with someone yesterday who said, you can only influence what happens tomorrow, so let's start where we are today and move forward with that. So I would say this, though, golf has accomplished a lot that we should be, whether we're proud of or not, we should at least acknowledge, because we have made some strides. And I want to share some of those with you here this evening. And I'm just going to tell you about a few programs. I'm not going to get into any detail. The PGA Tour Minority Intern Program is one. The PGA of America Golf Industry Supplier Diversity Initiative is another. The USGA LPGA Girls Golf Program, another. The PGA of America Minority Collegiate Golf Championship, including the Business of Golf Career Expo. I saw a young man playing today that had one of those caps on, so I know at least one person in the field has participated in that in the past. The Executive Women's Golf Association now numbers more than 20,000 members around the country. The Golf Course Superintendents Association of America, where I served for 14 years, as Mike pointed out, has a diversity initiative designed to introduce people from diverse backgrounds to that profession. The PGA of America recently had an arrangement consummated with the University of Maryland at Eastern Shore, which is the first historically black college to offer the professional golf management program. I think you'll begin to see fruits of that labor in several years. And another piece that gets overlooked a lot is that golf, as you know, is now part of the Olympic Games. And so you might say, well, what does that have to do with increasing diversity in golf? And the answer is it has a lot to do with that, because the people who were involved with the effort to accomplish that looked at it from the perspective of there's nothing that we can do in golf to expose it to a wider variety of people globally than to get it to become part of the Olympics. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But the fact is that that was never about another golf tournament for Tiger Woods or Rory McIlroy. That was about getting more people involved in the game worldwide. So at its core, that has a lot to do with enhancing the diversity of the game on a global scale. And I did want to mention the programs, a few programs of the World Golf Foundation that we believe are addressing this issue. The first and probably best example is the First Tee. I'm not going to get into any detail because we'll be hearing from my colleague Joe Barrow in a few minutes about that, who will, I'm sure, eloquently state what's going on there. The World Golf Hall of Fame, you saw Charlie Sifford, who's a member of that institution. There's some other things that are happening I'm going to reference in a few minutes about that. And in Golf 2020, which is an industry initiative designed to enhance participation and interest in the game, has initiated an adult player development program which is called Get Golf Ready. The reason that I mention it here tonight is because one of the efforts underway is to put that program in parts of the country where the preponderance of people who would play at that golf course come from diverse backgrounds. So that's the way that we're trying to enhance diversity through that particular program. So that's a partial list of what's going on in golf, but the fact is we must do more. And on the subject of doing more, I'm very pleased tonight to announce that the World Golf Hall of Fame will begin work in the immediate near future to create a special exhibit that will chronicle the story of the African Americans' journey in golf in the United States. The World Golf Hall of Fame COO, Jack Peter, is here this evening, is going to spearhead a committee that is going to develop the direction of this special exhibit. There's a lot of details to be worked out. I'm not here tonight to speak to those, but what I am here to say is that the story of the African Americans' journey in golf in the United States will be told in the World Golf Hall of Fame, and you will see that come to life sometime in 2012. That much you can take back with you tonight. So as I conclude, I want to share with you a few closing thoughts. The first is this. I fully recognize that progress has been made in golf, but that there is a long way to go, and we are just probably in the earlier stages of our journey together. And I really view it as that. The fact is that participation in golf in our country is less among the Asian American community, the African American community, and the Hispanic community than it is of the Caucasian community, and in some cases pretty substantially. And there's issues surrounding that are of concern to those of us in leadership positions in the game. But what we want to do ultimately is work to ensure that golf looks like America looks like, because we feel if we accomplish that, that the game will reach its full potential and be the game that we all think it can become. The second thing I'd like to do, there are several people, many of whom are in this room, that I wish to thank and call out, because these are people who have educated, who have mentored, and who have inspired me during my journey, which has lasted now some 20 years, at least in golf as it relates to diversity. This too is not a complete list, and this too is not in any order of importance, but these are people that I just feel that should be recognized tonight. Lou Horn, who I don't believe is here. Barbara Douglas, who is here. John Merchant, who is here. Joe Barrow, who is here. Bill Dickey, I don't believe Bill's here, but one of the stalwarts of the African American movement in golf. The late William Powell, Renee Powell, Rafael Martinez, Ernie Ellison, who's here. Laney Griffin with the golf course superintendents. Mike Cooper. Mike, thanks for that introduction, by the way. By the way, Mike Cooper has authored a paper. A couple of years ago, the World Golf Foundation commissioned a study of diversity, the current state of diversity in golf in the United States, and Mike spent a year authoring that paper. Joe, thank you for loaning him from the first tee. Mike is now back in the first tee. It's a wonderful compendium of what needs to take place in this country in terms of diversity. I'll make another comment on that in a minute. And then finally, Bill Crouch. Bill Crouch is the president of Georgetown College in Kentucky. He's the only Caucasian on that list, by the way. And I'll have a statement about that in just a second. So let me conclude by making a pledge to everybody in this room. I want you to know this, that as long as I'm in a position of leadership in the golf industry, I'm going to fight, I'm going to pursue with all zeal and with all vigor 4 things. One, that we can bring people into the leadership of our industry, qualified people who can work in the game from all races and genders. 2, that we can bring participants into the game, people who can enjoy the game, who can play the game from those same groups. 3, that the suppliers to our industry, the people that provide product and services to our industry, represent the full spectrum of business owners across the country from all races and genders. And then finally, competitors in our tournaments also reflect that diversity. I will continue to pursue that, as I said, with all zeal and all fervor. And here's why. I'm going to read you, if you don't mind, an email that I received today. Joe Barrow and myself and a couple other people in the golf industry received this from the aforementioned Bill Crouch. And if you just bear with me, it's a little long, but I think it's important that I read it because it responds to that question as to why. Here's what he says. Your dream of diversity within the employee ranks of the golf industry is working. Wednesday, Stephen Young, a recent Georgetown College first tee scholar, came into my office, hugged me, began to cry. I joined him, as he told me he had just been hired by the World Golf Foundation. He knows, and I support the notion, that he was hired because he was the best candidate for the job, not because he was African American. Just a quick reminder, he grew up in the first tee program in Memphis. He played in the Walmart Open. I met him at Pebble Beach. I offered him a full scholarship. He was raised by a single mother in inner city Memphis. His first semester, he had a 1.0 GPA. I told him if he didn't get a 2.0 in the second semester, I would send him home. He didn't, and he returned back to Memphis. I made him leave all his dorm things in the basement of my house so he'd know there was always a connection. He worked in a factory, and every day he longed for another chance. He returned a new person, finishing his degree with a 3.2 GPA. He did not play on our golf team, but focused on academics. He was immediately hired by Wazoo Sports, where he received 2 promotions. He came to see me 2 months ago to say he wanted a career in communications within the golf industry. He received several rejections, but because of his past rejections, knew that if he worked hard, followed the 9 steps of leadership he had learned in the First Tee program, his opportunity would come. It has, and to all of you, I say thank you. And here's maybe what's most important. Preparing minority young people for the opportunities that wait for them is tough work. They have so many obstacles to overcome. That is why most people and organizations don't get involved. Because of each of you individually and collectively, you have changed a family for generations to come. Now Stephen Young joins Stephen Outlaw, Chris Hawkins, and Ashley Corio in impacting the future of golf. And just wait until my current students get ready for graduation in the golf industry. So when you think of why this is important, here's why it's important. And so with that, I bid you well for this evening. I thank you very much for having me. And all I say to you is keep up the fight. It's worth it. And we're all in this together. Good night.